Hi everyone, this is Melissa Keller, Director of Events and Project Management for Vineyard Worship. We release new music on the first Friday of every month. Never Run Dry is Vineyard Worship's latest monthly single, featuring Vineyard favorites Sarah Pemberton and Tim Brown on vocals. Pushing the boundaries of modern worship with echoes of pop country and soulful guitar, Never Run Dry is a breath of fresh air with a soaring chorus.
Your love is like a river that will never run dry. Sing your love, oh your love. Your love is like a river that will never run
Find Never Run Dry and all of Vineyard Worship singles wherever you listen to music.
I'm Leslie Jordan, and I'm a songwriter, and I live in Franklin, Tennessee. Well, I grew up in East Tennessee, Johnson City, so almost as far northeast as you can get before you're in North Carolina. I grew up in a home that we were very close. I had a lot of cousins who lived nearby, aunts and uncles. Like I was one of 14 cousins. And so I just assumed that everyone had that kind of a family. Every family function was loud, but everyone had a seat at the table. That was kind of the family I grew up in. So I grew up with one sister and an older half brother who lived with us, a couple different times as we were growing up. But we lived in a pretty nice neighborhood. We could walk to school, and so it was very community driven. I lived outside a lot of the time too. I would say that's one of the things that I remember most about growing up is that my sister and I and our neighborhood friends, we were outside all the time. Winter, summer, spring, fall, like as much as we could be outside, we'd be outside. And I think that kind of contributed to just being imaginative. And, we didn't have a lot of TVs or screens, or that was just kind of, we grew up being kicked out the door, and I loved that. I grew up, we listened to a lot of music in my house, which, I'd say is another element of my upbringing that's still really important to me. We listened to a lot of oldies and singer-songwriter. My dad had a story for every song that came on the radio. So, he's one of those guys that can remember time and place, and nostalgia is like his language. And so that's how I interpret music too. It's like, oh, I can remember this time that I heard that song, or this album that I bought, or, what this band meant to me. Like that's how I grew up listening to music and interpreting music. We were, a religious family. We went to church. I would say we didn't have a lot of discussions around faith in our house, but we prayed and we talked about the implications of our belief. But most of that conversation happened in the context of church. I was about 12 when my parents divorced. And so I ended up moving to Indiana with my mom. And that was a pretty big, pivot in my life. So yeah, through that, and I started writing music. So music kind of became my escape, but also my expression for things. So that kind of continued throughout high school and into college. And yeah, so I would say those are kind of some key points of my life and my upbringing.
You're listening to the Ferment podcast, conversations about worship and transformation. Today's guest is songwriter Leslie Jordan.
This episode is brought to you by our friends at worshipteam.com. Worshipteam.com comes preloaded with over 12,000 songs, with new songs being added all the time. Hillsong, Bethel, Vineyard, Six Steps, Jesus Culture, just to name a few. Service building with Worship Team is a snap, and all the songs are completely legal and licensed. You can also find them on social media, Facebook at worshipteam.com, Twitter at worshipteam, Instagram at worshipteam_WT. Visit them at worshipteam.com for a free trial today. Complete worship planning with thousands of songs, easy interface, mobile apps, and legal rights for your church. All you need in one place, worshipteam.com.
All right. So what's been going on? Like, we've had 5 months of COVID days.
Wow.
What's been happening in your life, Leslie?
I saw something, my husband actually read this to me last night. He said, so far in 2020, we've had January, February, March, hot March, hot March. I'm like, that's how it feels, right? And I can't believe it's August.
Yeah.
And this is where we're at. So yeah, I've been trying to stay as consistent as possible in what my life looked like pre-COVID. I think the first month or two was a lot of, figuring out how to be at home and how to be isolated with our family, which wasn't too different from our regular rhythm. But all the things that came with that. And so I think we've found a little bit more of a rhythm these days, and, being with our people and trying to stay as connected as we possibly can, kind of in the midst of all of this. My in-laws just came to town to visit, and that was really sweet. Not just for us, but for my son, who's 2.5, who I think was getting really tired of mom and dad. He was ready for some other people. So he just got grandma and grandpa undivided attention for a solid 4 days. And so now we're in the aftermath of that, where he's maybe a little mad again that he's got to be stuck with the two of us.
Poor guy. Oh no.
Yeah.
So how many of your plans changed?
Not a ton. I think the one kind of massive change for me was I run an organization here in Nashville called The Fold. And we create safe spaces for writers and songwriters to find their original voice within the context of community. And so that has probably been the biggest shift, is we do workshops and writing groups in person, and we do retreats in person. And so those are things that we've had to kind of table for now. And also running a nonprofit in a pandemic, when, the goal is to raise money to continue to serve the people, that it's all now virtual, and everyone's trying to figure out how to exist and maintain their organizations. And so that was probably the biggest shift. But from the job side of things for me, I am a songwriter. So I'm published with Integrity Music, and that actually picked up because a lot of artists were home and off the road, and Zoom became a pretty easy way to write, and more people were able to write from, like I was writing from with someone from London a few weeks ago. It's easy for everyone to do. So that part of my life actually kind of picked up.
Isn't that interesting?
Yeah, which, I really love. I think songwriting for me has always been the, like when I thought about what I wanted my life to look like, I want to be a songwriter forever, like until I can't write anymore. And so to me, that was exciting to go, oh, this is great. Like I can do this even when the world shuts down. And it's not only another way to be expressive, it's also a way to stay connected, whether you write something or not.
Yeah, and that was actually my next question. I was really interested in how you think of yourself vocationally, because you are a songwriter, but you're also a performer, and you have a history of leading worship, and I know you have the nonprofit thing that you go with. So yeah. I guess what I'm hearing you say is you think of yourself as a songwriter. Is that right?
Yeah, for sure. Yeah, vocationally, I'm a songwriter, and then running the nonprofit. So I co-founded it, and I'm the executive director. That is my passion. So that's something I'll do for as long as I can, with or without the paid side of it, which my board of directors hates. That they're like, we should probably raise some money. And you should probably get paid for what you do. But yeah, I actually came off the road. I was in a band for 8 years called All Sons and Daughters, and we toured for 7 of those years. I get asked a lot if I miss being on the road, and currently, obviously, with the status of touring life, that isn't, no one's touring. But I haven't missed it at all. And there isn't a part of me that really desires that life for now. And so I'm thankful. There were a couple of times where I'm like, wow, I'm really grateful that that's not, kind of a main source of life and income and expectations for me. And that I've had several years. We ended at the end of 2016. So 3.5 years, I haven't been dependent on touring as an artist, which is great.
Yeah, you've been building a new life.
Yeah.
Yeah, well, yeah. Talk to me about the desire to be a songwriter, because you said that was something that was always in your heart. Does that mean that was kind of like rolling around in there when you were a little girl?
Yeah, for sure. I started writing songs when I was 11, probably 10 or 11. And that was a way for me to express emotions and a way for me to get thoughts out of my little adolescent mind and heart. And, I grew up in a really like my family situation with music. It was so influential. I loved listening to lyrics. So music, I enjoy the melody side of music, but I think I was always really driven by a good lyric. And so that was something that I wanted to do. I didn't know that songwriter was an occupation. Like, I didn't know I could be, I didn't know what a top liner was. I didn't know those things existed, that there were people that didn't perform the songs that they wrote. But I definitely put less emphasis on the performance of the song than I did on the writing of the song. Performing always stressed me out. I got nervous every time I had to stand in front of people or talk in front of people. So I think I was definitely more in that. When I found out I could just write songs for other people to sing, I was like, that sounds awesome. So that has, I would say that passion, that desire has always been there, but I didn't know that was, realistic.
Okay, so even during All Sons and Daughters days, were you still kind of in that mode of, I would just much rather write these songs than go stand on a stage and perform them?
Yeah. And what's beautiful about writing songs for the church is that's kind of what you're doing. Like, you're writing songs for other people to sing. And so, because it wasn't necessarily me or my platform, or like, we always were representing the group, and we were always representing our church and always representing kind of the path we were on as a faith community. It was much easier for me to write songs on behalf of the people I was leading and standing alongside of. And that doesn't mean I don't have things to say, or that doesn't mean that I don't have songs that I will release along the way. And I've been trying to find that balance, but I did struggle with, being gone, and still got nervous most nights, and said one or two things I regretted on stage, like
that's right. Look, I'm actually really happy to hear you say those kind of things. And I think a lot of people will be, Yeah. That's wonderful. Well, that's actually what I wanted to talk to you most about, was songs.
Awesome.
I would love it if we could just spend the next little bit talking about songs and writing with other people, if that'd be okay.
Sounds great. Let's do it.
Yeah. Why don't we start here? Where do songs come from?
Ooh. Well, Adam, when a man... No, I'm kidding.
Yes, that's right. That's right. Where do songs come from? The stork? Is it the stork?
It's a song stork, actually. Man, songs... so people have different theories on where songs come from. I think songs come from a need to express and a need to use our voice. And so it starts in that hidden interior place. And I think what is different about the different genres and forms and styles of music is based on the community and the context you're in, right? So a guy named Brett was a creative arts pastor of our church at the time when I was there, and somebody asked him, what's the difference between an artist and a songwriter, or an artist and a worship leader? And I've loved this explanation. He said, an artist is someone who feels like they have been given something to give to people. So like an interpretation of a voice, whether it's from God or from what they've experienced in life, they have been given this message that they then get to share with the people. And a worship leader is someone who feels like they have taken a song from within the people and among the people, and their job is to turn that song up toward God. And so I always loved that idea that you can be both an artist and a worship leader, because I've had a lot of friends who have said like, well, I don't lead worship because I'm an artist and I don't want to confuse the two. But I think it's more about direction, and it's more about the idea of where are our songs meant to go. So I would say, yes, it all starts kind of originates from this place within us, right? We have something to say, whether it's from, God source or it's from a community source. There's something that we've been given, and we want to interpret that and share that. So also from a desire to share with other people. And because I have written I've been a co-writer now for about 10 years. I think a song comes from a conversation. And that's my most favorite part of writing songs with other people, is getting to sit with other people and interpret what it is that they want to say. And then we come together and find that common space and write that song together. Well,
go ahead and just talk to me about co-writing here for a moment, because that was something I really wanted to dig in with you, because I know that you do this quite a lot.
Yeah.
How do you think about a co-writing session? Is that something that takes pressure off? Do you feel less pressure in a co-write, or are you one of those people who feels maybe more pressure in a co-write?
It's a different kind of pressure. So I would say I still feel the same amount of responsibility that I do when I'm writing a song alone versus writing with someone else. But the expectations I put on myself when I co-write is that I'm there to serve the artist. I'm there to serve the person who feels like this is a song that they're meant to carry. And so that will change how I approach the conversation. In a co-write, I love to be more of a listener than a talker. I love to receive someone else's idea first, rather than come in hot with I've been working on this real snappy melody and this real great upbeat lyric. Because then that sets the tone for the direction of the song. Whereas if you're sitting with an artist, and the first thing I love to say is like, what have you been learning lately? What's on, are there any songs you've been trying to get out of your head, or that you haven't been able to finish? Or is there something you've been wanting to say that you haven't felt the permission to say yet? And those are the songs I want to help artists write, because I feel like a lot of times as an artist myself, I can get stuck there. And it takes somebody that you can trust as an artist to help you write those songs. And so my desire is to be that person in the room that artists can trust and say, and not bending my own beliefs or bending my own desires or expectations necessarily, but saying like, my job is to come in and help you write that song. And I feel honored to be in that position. And so that's honestly, it gives me so much energy, more energy to write with people than it does to write by myself. A lot of times writing by myself is maddening, and I don't get very far. And usually I'm like, well, that's crap, so I'm not gonna work on that anymore. So I really do enjoy writing with people, and it feels like a true honor.
Yeah, and part of what I hear you saying is, or these words sort of popped out while you were talking, the words listener, serving. This it feels almost therapeutic in some ways.
Oh, for sure. I part of the work I do in this nonprofit is I've been trained and certified in this method called AWA method. It's a writing method where we take people through this expression prompt-based writing, where I'll give a poem or I'll give a word, and then we'll write for 10 or 15 minutes. And then I facilitate responses among that group of people. And one of the practices of that writing method is that we listen for what's strong and what stays with us. So as we're hearing someone's writing, we say back to them what's strong about the writing. And I would say that training in me, and then doing that work among writers for the last 3 years, has helped shift the way I sit with people. And instead of constantly listening for what's wrong and what needs work, I'm listening for what's strong and what stands out. And then we build on that. As opposed to breaking down what isn't working, we go from, man, that melody and that part is so good. Like, okay, now we have to beat that, right? So we have to make, if that's our verse, we've got to make a banging chorus. Like I get so excited about coming in with that approach. And I think that training and that practice has really helped shift within me the ability to sit with and listen for those things. And that does feel very therapeutic. I've been in counseling now for the last 3 years. And, just being able to sit with somebody who listens is such a gift,
That's right. Well, and I would imagine that would make the person you're co-writing with, especially if you're listening for strength or listening from strength rather than just listening for what's wrong or from a critique place.
Yeah.
I can just imagine as someone who maybe would be co-writing with you, that would feel so encouraging. And I don't know about you, but I feel more creative when I'm encouraged.
Yeah.
I feel more creative when my heart is open and happy rather than feeling under the microscope or feeling like I'm judged.
Yeah.
That stuff tends to shut down my own creativity.
Yeah. And I also think I've done it wrong in the past. And so I can look back at the way I did it poorly and see what you're talking about, which is so much more effective when we can be heard and we can feel like our voice has a place, rather than feeling like you have to fight for the best idea in the room. And I've been that way. I remember coming into this industry, and some of the first advice I got, which I am angry about this advice, was if you wrote 60% of that song, you fight for 60% of that song. I mean, that was the first advice I got. And so the first couple years as an artist, I'm going like, well, I wrote 75% of that song, so I'm going to take, and that puts you in a position of trying to hold power and trying to be, and trying to have a more important voice as opposed to just saying, whoever is in the space. And this was advice I got later from another great friend and songwriter, who is very successful for all, intents and purposes, has said, it doesn't matter who's in the room, it's equal splits. It doesn't matter who said what, it's equal splits. And this is a guy who could probably fight for 90 to 100% of every song he's in. And he shares that. And I think there's just something more beautiful to that approach than that. Like, I always have to fight for my voice to be heard. I always have to fight to be to have the best idea in the room. I would much rather speak to the strengths of people than to say that idea isn't good, and help. Yeah.
What I love about what you just shared, I'm really glad you told that story, especially because there's a lot of people who are listening to the podcast who are maybe like new writers or, coming up in this thing.
Yeah.
I just love that you shared a story about generosity.
Mm.
That really that second way of thinking about even something as really practical and something that shapes the future of our lives, like maybe songwriting or publishing, splits and that sort of thing. The first bit of advice you got was really a mindset based on scarcity. And the second bit of advice you got was one that basically says, the world is abundant. There's enough. And if everybody's in the room, then I'll share with you, because that's just maybe the kinder way to do it. And, I don't know. I just, that feels so much better to me.
Dude, me too. And when you are operating from a place of scarcity, like, no one's your friend, right? You can't trust anyone. It's that you always are positioning yourself for, like, I have to look out for myself. And I think that is also that, like, the mentality of, I'm a white woman. So there is a privilege to being white for myself in the spaces that I have not been excluded from because of my color, but there are spaces I have been excluded from because of my gender. And so there are moments and have been moments along the way for me where I have felt like I've had to speak louder and to push harder. And so it is really a beautiful thing when you can walk into a space and go, I'm not going to have to fight for my voice to be heard in this space. And I just think it's important for those of us who have been given those opportunities to continue creating spaces for other people to know I don't have to fight to be heard in this room. I don't have to fight to show up. I matter, and what I say is important, and just as important as everyone else in this room.
It's beautiful. I love that. Let me ask you one more question about co-writing in particular. Yeah. How do you feel, or how do you show up when you don't know the person? Like you've never met them. It's, I would imagine this has happened at some point.
Yeah.
Someone has said, you know what? We need to get Leslie to come in and help. Or maybe Leslie could help you finish this song. And so you pop on a Zoom, or you show up to some little studio in Nashville and you walk in and you've met this is the first time you're meeting the person. And maybe you know them by reputation, or maybe you don't. Maybe you don't even know them at all. How do you prepare, or how do you feel when you don't know the person at all?
Man, that's a great question. I think it's a similar approach to, kind of the same space, is like, it's important if I'm the songwriter and they're the artist, I want them to know I'm there for them. And so I will ask a lot of questions, and I will, if they're coming to my studio, it's like making sure they feel comfortable. They know where the bathroom is, and they've got, the food and drinks are in here, and this is, where we're going to be most comfortable. Like those kinds of things. It's hospitality, I think, is maybe a good word for it, is just being a hospitable person. And then being vulnerable. So being able to share kind of my position in life and some of my beliefs. And, I think our beloved Brene Brown says vulnerability breeds vulnerability. And so there is a part of that is coming with my whole self, that will and can allow someone else to feel comfortable being themselves with me. And so, yeah, I write with a lot of people I don't know. And sometimes it can be draining, but most days it's actually really life-giving. I really enjoy writing with new people, and I really enjoy getting to meet new people. And I think it's fascinating that you can start with a blank slate, including never having met the person before. And at the end of 2 or 3 hours, you have a song, or at least a template for a song. That never fails to amaze me.
I love that. That moment right there of starting with nothing and ending with something, or maybe even ending with a finished song. That's a perfect day for me. It's like, okay, I don't care what happens after this moment today. It cannot be ruined.
Right. It's fascinating. My husband is he was a math teacher for 10 years. And so anytime I can throw like random math problems at him, he gets really excited. So the other day, it was several months ago, but I was like, okay, I'm going to give you a set of criteria. Let's say the song is in the key of C, and it's 3.5 minutes long, and there's, 4 beats per measure, and whatever the template is, like, here are the numbers. What are the odds I'm going to write the same song twice, like in my lifetime. And the number that's a very limited set of numbers, right? Like one key, this long. I mean, it's basically zero. Like the number is like 1 in 36 gazillion or something crazy. And
Yes.
and it's not a true statement because I can write the same melodies, but it's just different shapes. But ultimately, like I wanted to be able to say, as long as I'm trying, I can write a different song every time I write. And maybe I'm
That's
writing
right.
about the same thing, or maybe I'm writing with the same person, but there is infinite possibility in songwriting. And there is nothing more exciting to me than that, because I'll never get tired of my job, like, because I'm doing something
That's right.
different every day.
That's right. Well, I guess I have another question that just sort of bounces off of that little moment there. Do you find that the things you're carrying with you in your heart or in your life in a given season, do you find that those thoughts, those books, maybe even those traumas, whatever it is, do you find that it comes out in the song, no matter who you're writing with?
No, I mean, I would say it will influence my suggestions, in terms of how I interpret a scripture if I'm writing a song from, the Bible, if we're like working on passages, potentially that way. But I do really try and show up for whoever I'm writing with. And now I have a pretty trusted circle of people who I will, I'll bring kind of my thoughts and out of the box ideas to that group of people. And typically that's when we'll explore some of those things for me. And I'm really thankful for that. And I think every artist or songwriter, even if songwriting is your main occupation, I think it's good for you to have those people where you can explore those ideas. And that's part of what I do in the Fold, the organization I run, is giving artists and songwriters a place to write those songs. So I've written some of the songs that probably feel the most like me on our retreats for songwriters, because that's where I kind of write those things. But yeah, I would say it maybe influences, but I don't necessarily hear it come out in all of the songs, because I really am there to try and serve the songwriter in the moment.
Yeah, so I guess what I'm hearing is two different things here. I'm hearing that in a co-write session, you're showing up to listen, to serve. You're showing up. We'll use the word hospitality again, because you threw that out there. It's a great word. And then at the same time, you're holding space for yourself as a songwriter to be able to express and give voice to the things that you're actually carrying in your life, whatever that is.
Yeah, totally.
Yeah.
Yep.
Brilliant.
I will say though, like
that'd be a great practice for us all, right?
Yeah. Oh yeah. And I will say, like, if an idea is expressed that I don't believe, I'm not afraid of saying, I wonder if we could say that a different way, or asking a question of the artist and say, like, what do you mean by that? Like, can we unpack that a little bit more? So I'm not just, I'm not setting aside my beliefs and convictions or experiences just to get to the end of a song, if that makes sense.
Yeah, it totally makes sense. There's a book, this has nothing to do with songwriting, by the way. There's a book that I read last fall, and I took my church staff through it. It's a book called Managing Leadership Anxiety by Steve Cuss. Yeah, and I hate leadership books. Like, I just hate them. But someone gave this book to me, and they said, "Hey, look, I know you hate leadership books, but you have to read this book." So I read it, and I was maybe like 3 chapters in, and I thought, "Oh, this is really good." But it's basically family systems therapy for teams and churches and leaders. And part of what Steve talks about in his book is a concept. He has lots of different concepts, but it's basically the idea of, like, I'm going to stay connected to you while being my true self.
Yeah.
Like, I'm going to be my true self, but I'm not going to either step away from you or dominate you in being my true self.
That's right.
So I'm going to let you be yourself, and I'm going to be my true self. And part of what you were just describing, it feels like that.
Man, that's so good, because I didn't have the language for that, but being in a band where it was a duo, we were kind of always, for the better part of a decade, kind of always trying to sort out, like, how do we show up and serve this collective vision, but maintain our individuality? And so I think through that, and then, through the early years of marriage and through working at a church, those were all things I was trying to sort out kind of all together, which was chaotic at times. But on the other side of that, I remember through kind of, the first couple of years of walking back through some counseling for me, the language I would use was, I'm going to go into this space with 100% of myself, and then I'm going to leave with 100% of myself. So it was also that idea of like showing up fully, but then taking all of that fullness with you, because I had a tendency to leave behind pieces. And that's when your energy starts to deplete, is like, I am going to bend, and I am going to become someone else, and I am going to compromise, and I am going to, rather than going like, what I feel matters and what I say matters, and these things are important. But I can also walk away from that and not feel like a fraction of a person. So I think it's kind of like what you're saying, but I think that's, without having that language, that's what I have been feeling.
Yeah. I think Steve calls it differentiation. Big word,
Yeah,
but it's just like, it's showing up as your true self, but not dominating. And at the same time, not disengaging,
Totally.
Which is,
totally.
It's once you get it, you're like, oh, this is great.
Yeah.
It actually in some ways leads to more confrontation at the beginning.
Totally.
I'm just thinking of my own family here for a second, but it leads to more honest talk, but it leads to deeper connection.
Yeah, man, that's so good. So good.
Yeah. Let me shift gears here just for a second. I still want to talk about songs, but I'm just very interested in this too, especially because of your history. Talk to me about a song, or being a songwriter who's written a song that's literally gone around the world. Like, it's kind of a genre-defining song, right? You've done that. Talk to me not only about that, but like, how do you show up now as a songwriter? Like, you've got this song out there it's a giant song. Does that feel like, do you feel more free, or do you feel like, oh gosh, I gotta redo that?
Oh no, I definitely don't feel like I have to redo that. Thank God. Because I didn't do it in the first place. I think that's kind of the misconception, right? Is that if you have a song that's successful by the world standards, then all of a sudden you're a song maker, hit maker, like you got to keep at it. And truth be told, like that song didn't almost make it on the record. Like like you don't get to pick which songs go around the world. So I think there have been moments where I feel really honored and like, wow, that's really cool. But at the same time, I'm trying to word this the right way. Like, I never felt a ton of ownership of that song, if that makes sense, where it's like, I don't feel completely responsible for that. I know I'm not completely responsible for that song going around the world. Like, that song did what it did because of the church, because there were other songwriters on that song. There were other churches that sang it. And there is a spirit of praise. There is this, it is a vertical song, right? I think that's a lot of maybe why churches connect to it, is because it's not time stamped. It's not an Easter song or a Christmas song or a song that's about a specific time, but it's really just an expression song, a song from us to God. And so I think it's kind of universal in its language, and it's simple. And so, but I wouldn't say like, okay, if I tried to write a universal praise song that was simple and, and repeating the same verse, like you can't recreate something. So there's just no point in trying. And I think, so I don't feel a ton of pressure. I feel really honored by it. But I don't think about it a lot. If that makes sense.
It makes total sense. And I just love that you said a moment ago, you just can't really make it happen.
No.
Yeah. I think sometimes people think you can make it happen.
Yeah, no, you can't.
But it's kind of a story of you just show up and do the work, and things happen.
Yeah.
Things have a life of their own.
I will say one thing in the 8 years that we wrote songs together, something that I feel has shifted, and I can get discouraged in these moments, is when we were writing songs, there was never a point where we walked into a room and we were like, man, we really need that, you know, let me think of like what would have been a popular, we really need that From the Inside Out song on your record. You know, we really need that Hill song. We really need that, you know, One Thing Remains. Like what I hear that now more often in song and co-writes for the church. Like, okay, you know, we're really looking for that Lion and the Lamb song. Okay. We're really looking for that, you know, I can't even think what a beautiful name it is. Like rather than saying what their church needs to sing, a lot of times our church's albums and our worship records are defined by what was a successful song before that song. And so now we've created that as the meter for what we need, as opposed to going, what does the church body need to sing? And that's all we like. I'm thankful. And I don't know that if we were a band now and we were kind of in this context, if we would be saying those same things. Now, I'm not saying that we did it the right way, but I am saying I am thankful that we didn't have a measuring stick, because we were really just trying to serve our people. It was like, okay, what do our people need to sing? Well, we're going through a season of lament. Like, let's write some songs that ask questions and try and allow people to, you know, maintain that.
What do you do to keep creativity alive? Because you've been doing this for a long time. This is not something you've only been doing for a year. You've been doing this for a long time now, and it's like thoroughly who you are. So there's probably moments when you wake up in the morning and you go, you know what? Don't really want to write songs today.
Yeah, I love reading. I am a big advocate for alone time. So I'll go on really long drives and not listen to anything. So just the space and the void and the, you know, being able to take things in visually feels like a creative shot for me. A lot of times I'll work on, you know, songs that I feel connected to as a way to, you know, feed that creativity. And then another, you know, just kind of consistent practice for me is writing, this creative writing that I'm a part of. So whether I'm leading a writing group or I'm waking up in the morning and just trying to do some free writing, kind of getting things out of my head, that's a big way for me. And then playing with my son, like there's really nothing more creative and imaginative than a child. Like he's making up names of invisible people in our house. Like he's pretending his cousins are like tiny little humans that he carries around his room. And there's always dragons coming. I don't know, you know, it's like, oh, there's dragons coming. So like, I get a lot of inspiration from him and just how he uses his imagination, that childlike nature.
Yeah. With the little guys, it's always on.
Yeah. That's the truth.
It's just always on.
Yeah.
I love that part of what you're explaining are some practices that are actually very approachable for all of us.
Yeah.
You know, some alone time, take a long drive, don't listen to the radio.
Yeah. Just
get out there, do some free writing, read a book.
Yep.
You know, these are things that all of us can do.
Yeah. Yeah. I can start to feel myself in need, typically when I get short with my husband or with my kid. You know, I go, oh, I don't think it's their fault. I think I need some space to just go and be. And so it's kind of acknowledging that, and then also creating space for yourself to have that is important.
Yeah. Okay. So what happens when your own life gets difficult? You know, you're a writer, and let's say you just have a season, and it's not just a bad day, but like, you know, hard times. You know, I'm just imagining the things that happen to a lot of us. You know, we just have 6 months or we have a year, you know, and it's just nothing's working. Like marriage is hard. It's not even like you're going to, you know, get a divorce or anything,
Right.
but like you're just, you know, you're short with your spouse for a long time. Things are not working, and maybe things professionally are difficult. And you know, you look at your week-long calendar and you're like, wow, I got four co-writes this week.
Yeah.
And things kind of like close to me are pretty difficult, and I need to go show up for other people.
Yeah. That actually happened kind of toward the beginning of quarantine of COVID, my husband and I were going through a lot and having a lot of really intense conversations. And so life at home felt very heavy. And then you couple that with parenting and a global pandemic, and things can feel pretty like lights out, pretty dark. I think I allowed, rather than I took some time off. So I just didn't schedule writes for a little while. And that felt, like a generous gift to myself and to my family, where I wasn't having to split that time. And then I tried to see those co-writes as ways of creative levity. So allowing myself to go in and not necessarily shut off what was hard and what was heavy, because a lot of times I would just share pretty honestly about that. But I think that goes back to that vulnerability breeds vulnerability a lot of times, by showing up and saying, like, life kind of sucks right now, and I'm trying to sort through a lot of things. That would typically then open a door for whoever I was writing with to be able to say, "Whew, I've been there before," or "I'm there right now," or and so I think there's a beauty in the balance of those, is like giving yourself freedom to not work so hard and not be on all the time. And then also the permission to show up, like we said before, as, your full self. And that means warts and all. And that can be a gift to yourself and to other people.
What would you like to say to your younger self?
Oh, man. What would I like to say to myself?
If we had a time machine,
Yeah. Oh, no, I don't know. That's a hard question to answer.
Yeah.
Don't be so worried about what's coming. I think I've spent a lot of my life worrying, and I have a kind of an anxious personality. And so I've probably lost too much sleep over the what ifs. And so I would probably tell my younger self, don't get so caught up in the what ifs. Like, try to be more present.
Perfect. Hey, let's do some quick hitters here before I give you one last question.
Awesome.
Beach or mountains?
Beach.
New guitar, old guitar?
Old guitar.
Long walk, hard run?
Long walk. Boo to the hard run. Boo.
Okay. Last quick hitter here. Fine dining or burger joint?
I gotta say neither, because I don't eat burgers.
Okay, so what's your go-to then?
I love Thai food.
Okay.
So like hole in the wall Thai place.
Hole in the wall Thai place. Listen, when it's right, it's right.
When it's wrong, it's also
really is.
real wrong though.
It is. No, I mean, but isn't that kind of the fun?
Yeah.
Like, you don't know what's going to happen. Like, anything could happen right now.
That's so true.
We're taking our lives into our hands.
Yep.
Okay, last question. This is the question we're asking everybody this season on the podcast. It's our little ender. What are you dreaming about right now? What's the dream of your heart?
Oh man, I've made it through this whole thing without crying, and I'm probably going to cry.
That's okay. Tears are great.
So 3 years ago, we bought a cabin that we've been using for retreat space for our nonprofit. And we actually are having to sell that cabin this month. So I'm like super sad about that, but I'm forcing myself to dream the next dream. Because through seasons of, through this season where we're all kind of trying to figure out how to gather and how to be together, my desire is for that place to exist again, and not too far into the future, where artists can rest. But the next time when we find that place, I want it to be a true retreat space, and I don't want to have to share it. We've run it as an Airbnb as well, which is great. But I want to create a place where artists can go and be themselves, and it is non-transactional, and they can work on an album if they need to, or take their family and retreat for a weekend. They can have some isolation or be in community with people, but a place of rest and reconnection for artists in this area is my dream.
Beautiful.
Yeah.
Beautiful. Leslie, thanks for doing this.
Oh man, thanks for having me.
You did so
what
good.
a privilege.
Oh, thanks a lot.
You're good. You're
All right,
a good
everybody.
interviewer too. So
Oh, man.
Yeah.
Putting that on my bio.
good interviewer. Quote Leslie Jordan. I want people to know that I'm not the Instagram sensation Leslie Jordan. I'm a different Leslie Jordan, you know.
That's right.
Yeah.
Oh, I think I know who you're talking about. Hysterical.
He's so funny. And I'm sad. You know, it's what a time to have the same name as an awesome comedian.
All right, everybody. Thanks for listening. Peace.
Hi, everyone. This is Melissa Keller, Events Director for Vineyard Worship. If you've been enjoying the podcast, I've got a couple of ways you could really help us. First of all, review the podcast on iTunes or the podcast platform of your choice. This helps more people find us. Also, connect with us on social media, Instagram at the Ferment Podcast and Twitter at FermentCast. Thanks for listening. See you next time.